I personally would say that from Arena to Daggerfall, there was a massive leap. Daggerfall to Morrowind, there was a big technical leap, but there was a little bit that was lost there. But I still would say that Morrowind is probably like S tier, like that is like the top of the line. In my opinion, I feel like a lot of people think that Oblivion is like the best one. I do like Oblivion. I'm not saying I don't like Oblivion. But in terms of like ranking the games, I still see Oblivion as being lower than Daggerfall. I would personally rank it, it always changes, but I would say Morrowind is first, then Skyrim, then Daggerfall, then Oblivion, then Arena. That's not including the side, like the spin-offs or ESO. If we're including ESO is actually pretty high. I actually really like ESO. More so because of the amount of lore and stuff that they add to the game that you can experience, which is really nice. But in terms of like a lot of the mechanics, the spell crafting, the magic systems, the class system, all that kind of stuff, it did start dying down technically since Daggerfall. But Morrowind to Oblivion, there was a shift, and then there was a massive shift between Oblivion and Skyrim. Because there's less diseases, there's less magic, there's less spells, less skills, less everything. And the reason for it is because they were trying to simplify it. Part of it was because they were trying to simplify it. The other part being that they were trying to get around some technical boundaries. Because with levitation, for example, that had to go because not because of like, oh well, they actually had it in the lore that it got banned later on. No, they put it in the lore that it got banned later on because they were having technical, like it was having technical issues. So, you think Morrowind was a great evolution of the Elder Scrolls at the time? I think, yeah, Elder Scrolls was. I think the reason that Morrowind did well is because Morrowind, it was still toward the beginning. Right? It was still toward the beginning of the series, and not only was it in a good spot to try and help develop the lore and what Elder Scrolls was going to be in terms of like the future games, because it was toward a time where gaming was evolving massively and very fast, but it was also I think actually it was Bethesda's like last hope. Bethesda almost went under. Because they were bankrupt as fuck. Like the company was about to die. So I think that was one of like the things where they were like, okay, we got to make this succeed. We have to make this fucking good. So I think that was one of the reasons. But it's crazy to think. Arena came out in 1994. And I think at the time it was like considered pretty advanced, you know? And then Daggerfall came around. Daggerfall had some advancements in it that were absolutely insane. Daggerfall was the largest game in existence in terms of map size for many fucking years until, I guess if you count Minecraft, then technically Minecraft, but I don't think anything else beat it outside of No Man's Sky. Because No Man's Sky does have a definite like, here is how big the map is or how big the game is, but it still does rely on random generation, and it's so fucking massive that it's not possible to actually discover everything. Because with No Man's Sky, if you were trying to explore every single planet, like walking around them and everything, the estimate that it would take is 500, I believe 500 billion years? I might be wrong on the numbers, but it's something massive, like completely insane like that. So, fixes, the good things, modding. I mean, modding saved gaming, or saved the Elder Scrolls games for sure. That is the one reason that a Morrowind one could be fun. We'll check this one out. I think this could be cool because this kind of talks about like a lot of the complications and stuff that they had at the beginning of like Elder Scrolls and shit.
Released in 2002 for PC and the original Xbox, The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind was the long-awaited sequel to Daggerfall, at that time Bethesda Game Studios' most successful release. Morrowind went on to sell 4 million copies between its release and the release of its direct sequel, The Elder Scrolls Oblivion, cementing itself as one of the best-selling CRPGs at the time. After years of turmoil, Bethesda had successfully...
I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of people kind of like a lot of the old school gamers kind of shifted their like thought process of the Elder Scrolls series, because back then the Morrowind was part of the CRPG genre, which the CRPG genre is one that has shifted a lot. But for reference, a CRPG like back then would have been games like Baldur's Gate. So Morrowind was under that category, and then as the games advanced, it switched from being like the the classic CRPG genre over to action RPGs, and I think some people kind of got upset about that.
Brought themselves back from the brink of bankrupt, and it came back with a bang.
Hell yeah, it did. Yeah, Morrowind saved their ass. But it was such a unique game too.
After Daggerfall saw relative success in 1996, Bethesda decided to reinvest and stretch themselves over a variety of projects. While one team worked on 2 Elder Scrolls spin-off games, namely the Elder Scrolls Legend, Battlespire, and the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard,
yeah, those
which was
did
headed
not do
by
well.
Todd, the God of Lies himself, a second team worked on 10th Planet, an ambitious space combat simulator in development as a co-venture between Bethesda and Centropolis Entertainment.
Damn, they've been working on like trying to get into the space stuff for a while.
Tomorrow. However, poor reviews and sales of both Battlespire and Redguard, combined with production problems for the 10th Planet, led to the cancellation of the
Who would ever
space
play
combat
CRPGs?
sim
Bro, I
and the
play
end for
CRPGs.
Bethesda Softworks as an independent
I don't really
company.
stream them though, because they're not really good stream games.
On their knees, Bethesda Softworks founder Christopher Reeve, alongside Robert A. Altman, set
In my
up
opinion,
ZeniMax
anyways.
Media Incorporated as a means to secure funding for Bethesda, bringing on investors such as SBS Broadcasting, and by
Is my
securing
headphones
high-ranking
breaking?
board members, including the likes of
think they
Robert Trump. Yes, the brother of that Trump. Reeve
They're
was
tough to
able
stream for sure, yeah.
successfully secure
Especially
enough
with how
funding
long they are.
to give Bethesda Game Studio the necessary money it needed to finish Morrowind. If this game failed, so would Bethesda Softworks and the Elder Scrolls series as we know it. With the writing on the wall, Morrowind was shaping up to be Bethesda's final swan song.
Yeah, so they had to put
Hail
everything
Mary.
into Morrowind. They had to make sure Morrowind succeeded. And damn, did it succeed. It did really good.
After
What is
6 years in
CRPG? So,
development,
CRPG is, the original definition of it was computer RPG, and then that ended up being, like, changed. I think now, if you ask somebody, I believe a lot of people classify it as, like, a classic RPG now. Because it's a weird genre that it's a, how do you explain it? It's like a dead genre. It's a genre that doesn't make sense anymore, but it still exists. But now most of them are seen kind of like how the original Baldur's Gate games are, or Divinity Original Sin, or what's another one? Planescape or Pillars of Eternity, like those kind of games. So now a lot of people see the CRPG genre as that. But there were a lot of like older RPGs that were classified as CRPG. So Daggerfall, Arena, Daggerfall, and I think Arena. Was Arena classified as a CRPG? I can't remember. Daggerfall and Morrowind were classic, aka turn-based, almost. Yeah, I mean a lot of them do tend to be turn-based for sure. But yeah, the original like definition of it was considered computer RPG, and I think now it kind of did turn into like just classic RPGs, like the old style, the old school versions of RPGs. Because RPG, the whole genre has shifted so much in terms of like how they actually deliver the gameplay.
and 4 years of delays, in 2002, Morrowind hit shelves. 2002? This game's 18 years old. Holy
It's so
fuck, it's old enough
yeah,
to
it's so
drink.
fucking old.
And it was exactly what Bethesda
Wait.
had needed.
It's older now because Oblivion is now 18. Oh my god.
A critical success adored by fans, with the game scoring 89 on Metacritic. Sales within the first 6 months hit 200,000, and Bethesda had secured their future. As reviews mentioned, Bethesda had sought to streamline and define the huge but empty world of Daggerfall. This was a decision taken by the higher-ups at Bethesda, including Morrowind's new project lead, Todd Howard. The entire team included writers, artists, and game developers were briefed with 4 simple letters. K-I-S-S.
Boke, don't remind me, okay? Elder Scrolls is fucking 30 today. Bro, Neverwinter Nights would just be considered an RPG when back in the day it was this new ARPG. Neverwinter Nights would be considered a CRPG today. I don't know if it would have had a different title back then, but I believe it is still classified as a CRPG. Am I wrong about? Hold on, I'm pretty sure that's right. I might be wrong though. Yeah, it's still floating the CRPG tag, although I don't know if that really means much anymore. I feel like if it uses D&D type rules, it probably just automatically falls under that, does it not? Or if it uses the Pathfinder ones. Wait, is it Pathfinder? Yeah, Pathfinder. You personally wouldn't consider it a CRPG? Yeah. I think that's where CRPGs get strange, but it's also kind of weird with like RPGs in general. I've heard people actually make the statement that Skyrim and Fallout 4 are not RPGs, are not real RPGs, which is one of like in my opinion, the way I see it, that is one of the most dead brain fucking comments that I could ever see about it. Genres aren't perfect. Well, genres aren't they're like things fall into genres to classify a basic understanding of what that game is going to be like, right? But not every single one of them is going to be pure. You're going to have games that are they derive from a little bit of everything. That's why, like, if you look at horror, for example, horror is not even a fucking genre. When I learned that blew my mind. There is no such thing as a horror genre. It's just horror themed. When I learned that blew my mind. Because I would, like, personally, I would see horror as being a fucking genre. But no, you just have, like, horror elements in games. But, yeah, with, like, RPGs, for example, there's different types of RPGs. Is Skyrim a CRPG? No, it definitely isn't. Morrowind is. Skyrim's not. Skyrim is an action RPG. Fallout 4 is an action RPG. Who the fuck would say Fallout 4 and Skyrim aren't RPGs? People on Twitter. What you would expect. People on Twitter and Reddit. It's the same people who argue about the dumbest shit. But yeah, everything, like, there is not a perfect classification for anything. Everything has a little bit of everything, right? If you had everything as one category, then, you know, there was one dude. Do you guys remember? There was one guy that popped in here trying to say that Metroid was a third-person shooter. Does anybody remember that? Somebody came in here arguing that Metroid was a third-person shooter, bro. A third-person shooter, dude. What? All right. Anyways, let's get back into this. Yeah, I think people misunderstand what genres are. Like what the purpose of a genre is, what actually the genres are, and yeah, I feel like a lot of people who make those kind of like dead brain arguments about RPGs and stuff, like especially with Skyrim and Fallout and shit, I think they classify every RPG under the term RPG, and they don't actually understand what the fucking RPG is. They don't understand what the genres are, because there's a lot of different things that, like, there's games out there that classify as an RPG that you wouldn't assume that classify as an RPG. You could kind of argue, well, no. Metroid Prime, I can see Metroid Prime being an FPS. But it still had, like, a lot of the traditional side of it, you know? Let's see what KISS is.
KISS, short for Keep It Simple Stupid, was the key philosophy used to create a game that was more accessible to a greater audience. A philosophy that is, so that's, for better or for worse, clearly still used today at Bethesda. What this meant for Morrowind was a smaller, yet more fleshed out
They still go by
world,
that.
a smaller set of skills, and a clearer main objective.
Yeah, look, Morrowind, I think Morrowind is a prime example of, like, a good fucking, like, in terms of the Elder Scrolls games and everything, because people argue about, like, oh, this is a good one, this is a bad one, whatever. I think Morrowind is that middle ground of, like, the best of all of the worlds, where you still, they still appeal to, like, the older audience, but even newer people can still get into it, as long as they're able to overcome some of the clunkiness of it, and the graphics, obviously. But when you compare Morrowind to Daggerfall. In terms of skills, in terms of like class potential, like all that kind of shit, Morrowind is downscaled. Because Daggerfall was actually a little insane. Daggerfall had different skills to talk to different creatures. Like, it was actually really fucking advanced. It had way more skills and stuff. It had more spells. It had a lot of different things. I think it had more diseases and shit, too. And then with Morrowind, they scaled it down for a lot of reasons. I mean, they kind of had to, right? But it worked. It still worked. It just kind of, I guess it kind of sucks that they... I don't know. When it comes to Skyrim, this is the only argument that I will make. Because I love Skyrim. The only thing that I will ever complain about with Skyrim, as an Elder Scrolls fan, is the fucking magic system. That is it. I can't... The magic system, the changes that they did with the magic system piss me off.
Unlike Daggerfall, which is more like a fantasy life simulator, Morrowind brings the series closer to the action RPG direction it would see itself slowly eking towards. Gone are banks, horses, usable ships, multiple houses, randomized quests, and procedurally generated dungeons and landscapes.
I forgot about the
Instead,
ship. Dude, you can buy ships and shit.
And thought about. It was
I forgot about that. Dude, you can buy, in Daggerfall, you can buy, you can take out loans, you can buy houses, you can buy a fucking ship. I forgot all about that. Like, this is one of the reasons that I've been keeping a close eye on Wayward Realms, because Wayward Realms, for those who don't know about it, it is being made by the people who made Arena, Daggerfall, and I believe Morrowind. It is the original creators of Elder Scrolls. They are coming together with a small team, and they are making a brand new universe that is very inspired and very has a lot of like I don't want to say tie-ins, but it feels like another Elder Scrolls game, but as like if it was, I guess, like an indie game. But it's going to have like a massive world. They're planning on having actual massive cities with like thousands of NPCs roaming around and shit. Don't know how they're going to do it. I have no fucking clue. On a technical aspect, I don't know how they're going to do it and make it run on a computer at a decent frame rate. But it's going to be neat, because I'm curious. They're massive fans of Daggerfall because they created it. It's their baby. But they're taking the entire concept of Daggerfall and they're bringing it to the modern age. So I'm so fucking curious to see what it is that they, like, what are they doing with it? Like, how much freedom is it going to have? Are you still going to be able to do all of the things that you were able to do in Daggerfall, but I guess even more fleshed out now? Because they even have, like, I saw some of the stuff that they were working on in terms of, like, the UI and shit. They have a whole fucking character sheet, like D&D character sheet for the characters that you make. That is the big question. Yeah, I think that would be sick. If they take everything from Daggerfall and bring it to the modern era, with obviously like some of the conveniences and stuff that you would expect in a modern RPG, but built upon to make like a very fully fleshed out role-playing game, I think it could be great. I am very excited to see what happens with Wayward Realms. I think it's gonna be great.
The game to grow. It was more accessible to new players. By just not forcing the player to delve through a difficult dungeon in the first 5 minutes of playing, helped the game to become more popular. I'm not here to say accessibility is bad, because of course it isn't, but I am setting up to how Morrowind and later Oblivion would find themselves at the tipping point, where on one side Bethesda is too simple, and on the other they're too complex.
Yeah, I definitely understand that part where they're trying to appeal to everybody. Daggerfall doesn't really care about your feelings at all. When you play Daggerfall, you literally start in a dungeon where the first few enemies can absolutely destroy you. And also, depending on your build, if you do not build your character in a certain way to take into account that certain enemies have resistances, and then you try to fight the imp that's in one of the rooms, you will die. 100% you will die, because that imp is so fucking strong and you cannot use normal weapons on it. It was terrifying. Morrowind, they did make it a lot better in that regard, because they start you off on a ship. You're not immediately pushed or like put into the presence of danger. And they also give you some quests at the beginning to help you get some XP and some items and everything to get you on your feet without immediately throwing you into a fight. Because, I mean, there's fetch quests and stuff in it, like right off the gate. Same thing with, well, I guess Oblivion's a little bit different because Oblivion does kind of throw you into a dungeon, but it's not nearly as complex because it doesn't rely on dice rolls. Because Oblivion, in Morrowind, they still had dice rolls. They still had the dice rolls from Daggerfall. You had to make sure that you had points into agility, maybe a little bit into luck, and then obviously use the skills that you are going to main. Otherwise, you keep missing. With Oblivion, they kind of got rid of that. They're just like, you know what? Just smack shit. Smack shit and it'll die.
Morrowind holds no punches, throwing its new main theme by Jeremy Soule straight at you on its title screen. Here, you have your expected amount of options, which is actually saying a lot when you compare it to the bare bones approach from previous titles. Upon hitting new game, unlike in Arena or Daggerfall, where you immediately enter your character creation screen, instead you are treated to an intro cutscene given some exposition on why you are on a ship sailing to Morrowind. You awake to the sound of wood creaking under the waves of the water, and the beautiful face of Giab with his gravelly voice saying,
"Stand up. There you go. You were dreaming.
You know what's crazy?
What's your name?"
Like, look at this. This was 2002. This is obviously not to today's standards and everything, but Morrowind doesn't look nearly as bad as I feel like most people think. Like, it doesn't look that bad. Obviously, with mods and OpenMW and all that stuff, it can look like way better, but like, this isn't that bad.
This
also,
shows
I don't care what anybody says, Morrowind had the best looking Dark Elves. The Dunmer in Morrowind are by far the best. Another thing, Morrowind actually had facial hair outside of fucking Oblivion. I don't know what the hell it is. Why wasn't there facial hair? There was painted facial hair in, okay.
Bethesda doing what they can to make this series approachable to new players, and to those not familiar with tabletop RPGs. Gone are the hundreds of game-changing choices you must make before even learning the controls.
I
Instead,
kind of
we
like
now
that
start
though.
the game in a
Dude,
much more
Daggerfall's
conventional
class
way.
system's so good.
After picking our name, we are guided through the ship. The entire entrance, which in total lasts about 10 minutes, is the entirety of this game's tutorial. Seemingly short for a game that
what if
boasts
they
over 500
they toss that
hours
into
of
the
gameplay,
lore?
but again, a big improvement over the studio's past attempts. You are given the option to pick your race and appearance, with the game clearly indicating the differences in the choices you are going to make, helping with your decision making. Next we proceed into the censor's office.
Yes.
The amount of times I've heard that damn voice.
Taking the beauty of that voice, because most full voice acting ends after this point. You pick your class, your birth sign, and get a final chance to change anything. A number of tooltips introduce the game mechanics. You encounter your first normal NPC, get some basic lore, and that's it. You are left fully off the leash to do whatever you want. Morrowind gives you immediate freedom, much faster than any.
I think they're
other
using
title in the
OpenMW for
series.
this.
No difficult starting dungeon, no easy starting.
You know these
dungeon,
lines way
just a
too, yeah.
peaceful transition.
Oh yeah,
and then
they're
you
using
can literally
OpenMW.
do anything you please. Want
I was about to say
finish the
that
game in under
view
10
distance
minutes?
is way
Go
too
do
good.
it. Want to learn how to
But also the
fly?
water.
Sure thing. Want to die to an oversized crustacean? No problem. Wait, hang on.
They're not.
Morrowind is a product of its time.
They're not including the fact that there's a spawn area in Morrowind that anything that spawns there becomes like 2 or 3 times the natural size. It's like a weird Easter egg. There are a few choices. There's a few ways we could do this, and the choice is yours. Yeah, I love I love the immersive side of like where you can go around and pick up stuff in Elder Scrolls games, and it's one of the things, at least with Morrowind and up, it's one of the things that is in games that's it's a very small touch, but there's not a lot of games that do it, and I'm always trying to find games that have that kind of like level of immersion. So if you guys know any, let me know. But the fact that like when they start you off, they just open the gates, right? Skyrim was a little bit different. I mean, to a degree, it had like its little intro, like story intro thing with Alduin and all that, and then you know you do you, right? But with Morrowind and Oblivion, it was kind of just you get off the thing or you get out of the dungeon, and then boom, you're just like, okay, well, you can do whatever you want. If you want to do a main story quest, here's the main story quest, but you don't have to. You can never touch it if you don't want to. Like it's really nice.
And while Bethesda were headstrong in their approach of
you have like a billion
streamlining over
other
the
things you can
offering
do.
that Daggerfall had given, there were some elements of the old school CRPGs of yesteryear that were left in. Before I start the circle jerking you over the many praises I have for this game, let's address some of the key problems that many new players have.
The combat. These days, the combat is not great these days. It's very clunky.
Much like the tabletop role-playing games that inspired the original Elder Scrolls, Morrowind uses a dice roll system that is heavily influenced
Personally,
by
I think it's
stats.
fine.
If you try to use a weapon you
But I
have
also
no
played
skill,
Daggerfall,
good
so.
luck having a chance to hit. In those tabletop games, this makes sense. Of course someone trained in only archery is going to struggle.
All right, you guys want to know the tip of how to make a good beginner character? Get a balanced, like a spell sword type class where you have magic and I guess strength, but have high agility, or try to get high agility, and conjuration. Conjure up the little dagger that you can conjure, because they give you a starter spell for it, and you just hit everything. As long as you can summon it, everything you hit immediately while you're trying to train up your skills. You sometimes wonder how someone could react going from modern Skyrim archery to Morrowind archery. I've never touched the archery in Morrowind ever, so I actually don't know how bad it is. I never did it in Oblivion either. I always played sword and spell. I just played as a spellblade. Yeah, it's gotta be rough though. Morrowind had more than just archery too. They had like missile weapons. So I think you had throwing knives. I want to say ninja stars, but I don't think ninja stars are one of them. I can't remember. But yeah, there were a couple of projectiles that you were able to use. It wasn't just archery. It was pretty neat.
Fencing. But in those games, you can use your imagination to fill in the blanks. If you roll a bad dice and are told by the DM that you missed, well, you can visualize in your head how your character could have done so. This doesn't
The endless
translate
stabbing.
into
I
a
remember
visual
when I
medium,
first played this
however.
game and just stabbed
Instead,
endlessly.
your sword bends time and space.
Now
as
I
it
can actually
phases through
kill
your
shit 'cause I know how to
opponent's
play it.
torso, and you hear a vague whooshing noise indicating that you have somehow magically missed. Here, Bethesda's goal of accessibility collapses. It is here that most new school Elder Scrolls fans stop playing. Don't get me wrong, I understand their gripes. It is frustrating when you have no visual indication of what you are doing wrong, instead possibly putting it down to a glitch or bug instead. But this mechanic.
To be fair, when I first played Morrowind, I had the same issue where I just kept on missing and everything, but this was the first RPG that I played. This is the game that got me into RPGs in the first place. But this is the first RPG game that I played, so I had no fucking clue what any of the stuff was. I didn't know anything about the stats. I didn't know what they did. I never played D&D back then. I didn't know anything. So I went into this completely blind, didn't know what I was doing. So what I would do is, instead of trying to kill anything or do like any of the quests that have you like going around doing stuff, this is why this is the only Elder Scrolls game that I still to this day have not complete the main story. Because back then I put hundreds and hundreds of fucking hours into this game, but I didn't know what I was doing because I was a kid. And so what I would do is I would play this game like a role-playing game, and I would go around to the big cities and everything, just trying to collect anything that was shiny. There was a city or a town. Fuck, my brain is all over the place. There was a house in Balmora, and it was the same house every time. I would go in there, I would kill the person that was in there, dispose of their body, and I would stash everything in that house. So anything that I could find that was shiny, if it had an enchantment on it or anything like that, I would steal it, anything of value, and just collect it. I would hoard it. And so that's what I did. I just played the game as somebody who collects things.
Mechanic, as it is implemented, is fully
Now I know
intentional
how to
and
actually play the
becomes
game.
much less of a problem in time. While it doesn't work exactly like this, I'm going to explain in the simplest way I can for any new potential players.
I'm gonna
Look
go
at
back
these
to it
skills
eventually.
as percentages. So
I need to
when
beat
you
this
try
one.
to attack a rat with a dagger,
It's the only
while your
one. I
short
beat
sword
I beat
skill is at
Arena.
5, that means you only have a 5% chance to hit.
Arena is like the
That's
hardest
pretty low,
fucking
right?
game.
Well, if that skill was at 45, now you have a chance to nearly hit half of your shots. That's much more manageable and not nearly as frustrating. Again, that's not actually how it's calculated, but it's a good way to explain to new players why the combat works like it does. With good class making and as little as 2 hours of playing, your character will be proficient enough to use your weapon of choice with little mishap, so this is really only a very early game problem.
Fatigue. Oh my god. That was another thing that I didn't realize back then.
Morrowind uses the familiar bars from the future titles, including health, magicka, and fatigue. But unlike Oblivion or Skyrim, fatigue is Morrowind's most important stat. It governs everything you do, and depletes from simply running, instantly slowing your game to a literal crawl. especially with some characters' starting speeds. This is a holdover from Daggerfall, but where your walking speed in that game is quite sprightly, in Morrowind it is as if your character is walking through treacle, or as the animation will have you believe,
slowly.
that everyone is trying their hardest to prevent King Kong's finger.
This is why in the past I was so hesitant on streaming Morrowind, because you move so slowly and there's no fast travel. Which I like it that way. I'm not a big fan of fast travel. Like I will use fast travel for convenience, but even Skyrim, my preferred method is to play Skyrim as a survival game without fast travel. I love that playstyle. But yeah, it is pretty slow. You can get the boots of blinding speed, but then you can't see, so then you have to try and create a spell or some other alternative method of having like magic resist on yourself so that it gets rid of the blinding part. But then it's also difficult to do that early game, so.
Go from slipping out at any given moment. This change in speed between the games was likely in an attempt to make Morrowind feel larger than it is, but it instead makes travel frustratingly slow, forcing you to run and then forever
There
have
is still
low
ways to
fatigue,
travel,
which
though.
impacts your already abysmal combat skill. To balance this, there are many spells and potions to replenish your fatigue before you enter into battle, but as with your combat skills, your access to these is limited until you're already a few hours into your playthrough.
Well, so it wasn't just that kind of like helped balance that. You can go to the Stilt Striders and stuff and use them to travel around. I think there was also like the boats. I'm pretty sure you were able to hire them to kind of like help you out and everything. There was also spells for there was the mark and recall spells, which I miss. I miss those fucking spells. But you were able to use those. So like if you could cast it, you know, go on your quest, complete the quest, and then just recall back, and then boom, like you could just knock it out. It was so nice. It doesn't stay slow forever. Yeah, no, it definitely doesn't. You can boost up your speed and everything. It's just early game. It's probably like early to mid game, depending on if you go with the boots of blinding speed method, or if you try to train up your athletics and your acrobatics and stuff, or if you use spells. It's text-based speech.
In 2002, you were lucky to find any RPGs that were fully voice acted, if any even existed then.
This was
sheer
another
volume of text, quests, and lore that any given NPC could pass on to the player would make voice acting this game, which came on a CD by the way, simply impossible. It is one of the many reasons
it was
why
nice because of how much there was,
taken so long. But I digress. This text-based speech system is another
I can't wait for
barrier to
Skywind.
entry
I can't
for new
fucking wait for
players,
Skywind.
And while it may not have been as much of an issue in 2002, it surely is in 2020, especially to the new school fans. These 3 flaws should be enough to explain to any hardcore fans of Morrowind why many people don't make it far into the game.
I can definitely agree with
that. The barrier
that.
to entry is simply too high for many people. So before I go into my many praises for what Morrowind did oh so right, I'm going to offer some fixes for these potential new players. 1. Accept that your class is important in this game. This isn't Skyrim. You can't simply change your playstyle halfway through and become the Master Thief Mage to the Companion College of the Dark Vampire Hood.
Have an issue with
you
that.
are role-playing
because I always like changing my playstyle.
Much like a real person does. Pick the weapon you want to specialize in and use it. You will find immediately that the early game combat is much more bearable when your character is proficient in the weapon style to begin with. 2. I actually agree that this fatigue system is too old school for modern day. I'm going to link 2 mods in the description that can be very easily installed to fix this, and I play all my new playthroughs of Morrowind using them. And 3, reading is a part of Morrowind, and I highly advise you do it. You will learn so much lore from it. I sometimes chuckle when I see people being amazed by the lore in some Elder Scrolls videos, but then I forget that they simply have missed the vast amount of knowledge hiding within the text of Morrowind's speech system.
Morrowind
as well
has
as the
so
hundreds
much.
of books this series now contains. Hopefully this advice helps, and if they don't, then stick around for when I discuss modern and some modern day conversion projects later on in this video.
There is like AI text-to-speech kind of stuff. I don't think they work with OpenMW, and some of them are very questionable because there is the morality of it. Because I mean, I'm sure that there's probably some out there that just use like regular text-to-speech type stuff. But some of them use the original voice actors. So they take the couple of lines from certain characters that actually are voiced, and they create AI with that so that you can fill in the gaps and then have the rest of the text that's read out to you. So that's you know that part becomes like a morality thing of like, well, is AI bad? Is it not? Whatever. I think that if you're playing this like, you know, by yourself, whatever, I don't think that the text is a bad thing. As a stream game, it sucks. It's not a good it's not a good stream game because of that. If you're going around trying to like do questing and all that kind, if you're trying to do it for like challenges and shit, it's whatever, right? But if you're trying to like go through and do like the main story, the side quests, all of the like experience all of that it has to offer, it's a shit ton of reading, like a hell of a lot of reading. All of those books, yeah, and each one of them you can read. Same thing with all of the newer games. I mean, they had books and stuff in Daggerfall as well. But yeah, each one of those books are books. They have a shit. Some of them will have like a little bit of text in them. Some of them will actually have like fucking chapters. But like the books themselves have like they're actual books. You pick them up, you collect them, you can read them. They're all different. Like it's crazy.
Before we dive into the vast amount of merits for Morrowind, let's give a quick thanks to the day's sponsor, me. That's right, if you made it this far and want to see more old school game critiques,
I won't
reviews,
skip it
then
because
consider
you know what,
leaving
you
a
made the
like,
video.
commenting what you think, and subscribing for more like this.
That's the person's name. Jwlar.
Where to begin? There are hundreds of videos discussing the many praises for this game, but I'm going to go over the aspects that are most important to me. The freedom. Morrowind offers a lack of hand-holding and urgency that I miss in the newer games in the series. There isn't an amulet
This game has no hand-holding at all. This is like a fucking Dark Souls game in that regard.
Looming over your head. You're instead advised to go see some random guy in some random town. With no agency to do so, you're left to your own devices. I understand that for many, this is actually a negative point, and can even feel overwhelming when you have no clear task.
It is overwhelming,
for me, this
but
freedom
I love
is
it.
what I like about sandbox games. There is no expectation thrust upon the player to do anything but explore and forge their own path in this brand new world.
You know what game that's a modern game that gets compared to this all the time? And it's one that I really need to play more of. But one of the downsides to it that a lot of people probably won't find appealing is the visual style of it. Kenshi. Kenshi gets it is a different play style and everything, but Kenshi gets compared to Morrowind a lot. And in many ways I can actually see it. The playstyle is different. Because even though you can control one character, you can also control a party of people. And it is like more top down, like it's more of like Divinity Original Sin style. But I can definitely see it because of the amount of freedom, the way that the factions work, the way of like if you go to a faction and then you kill the leader, you can just do that. You could do that in Morrowind. You can actually kill Vivek. I've done it. You can straight up kill Vivek in Morrowind. The game does give you a warning. What the fuck just happened, bro? Yo, this is one of the downsides to having a 3D VTuber model. Sometimes you just have a stroke. The game does warn you of like, hey, you did this thing. The main quest is now busted. Even though they do it in like a more of a lore friendly way of being like, oh, the darkness is coming or whatever, you know, because you destroyed your playthrough. But the fact that you can do that, I fucking love. I'm not a fan of Oblivion and Skyrim. I understand it, but I don't like that they make it so that you can't kill the NPCs. I wish that even the kids, I know that's a controversial take, even the kids, fucking kill them, you know? The fact that you can't, it ruins the immersion, man. It ruins the immersion. I think what a good touch would have been is to do it like followers, like companions, where they get downed, and then if you continue to attack them, then it does it. And then it pops up like a little warning being like, oh my god, the stars are misaligned and everything's fucked. I think that'd be a nicer touch. The chicken, oh my god. Yeah, the chicken where nobody can see you and then you kill it and then it's just like, you have murdered like 10 people. You have the bounty that equivalates to you murdering like 10 people.
And what a world it is. Exploration is a cornerstone of the Elder Scrolls series, and with modern Bethesda games in general. And much like how Fallout offers
Fruit
a
is
world
delicious,
that
it
is
is.
familiar to us, yet not quite like our own, so does Morrowind.
I loved the
Medieval-esque
alien
buildings
nature of
stand against
Morrowind.
a backdrop of
It's
giant
still my
mushrooms
favorite.
and floating asteroids. Familiar, yet different. Humanoid beings walk among humongous crab shells. Weapons and armor mimic our own, yet use materials not found on Earth. It is this perfect exposition of alien versus relatable that makes the island of Vardenfell one of the most interesting locations the series has ever visited. We aren't in some generic high fantasy setting shared by hundreds of games before, or in a Nordic frozen wasteland again visited by many other games.
Yeah, Morrowind was very unique in its style and approach and everything. I don't know how many of you know this, but Oblivion wasn't supposed to look the way that it does. It was actually supposed to look like a tropical rainforest kind of thing. But it took a lot of inspiration from Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings was super popular at the time. And there was a thing that I didn't really know until later on, but supposedly Skyrim is also inspired by Game of Thrones. Not the show, but the books. So, yeah. With Morrowind, it was kind of just like its own thing. They were just like, instead of taking things that are popular currently, it just kind of ran with it, which I think they should do more.
Instead, we have a location that is entirely...
It needs a unique identity, yeah?
This exposition of the familiar
I still love
the unknown can be seen further within the culture of the Dunmer people. Whereas the Imperials pull much influence from our real-world Romans and from the medieval kingdoms of Europe, and the Nords are literal copy-pastes of the Nordic countries of Earth, the Dark Elves of Morrowind share a culture unlike anything seen on our planet. Sure, they share similarities to many people on Earth. They're afraid of foreigners and their effect on the country, they look down on races they deem lesser than them, they even force some of these races into slavery. And yet they are still unique enough to not be tied to any one culture that we...
You don't think that you buy that Skyrim took inspiration from Game of Thrones? I don't know if it was or not. It was something that I came across on Reddit, and it threw me off because I was like, what? No, it was not. And then there was a thing talking about how, like, I guess one of the developers mentioned it or something. Well, no, it wasn't that it took inspiration from it. It's that they had things in Skyrim that took inspiration from it. It wasn't that the whole thing of Skyrim was inspired by it, because it's more of like what he was saying, where it was like more of like the whole Nordic thing. You have to check it out. Yeah, if you find more information on it, definitely send that to me. That way I can be sure. But I thought that was interesting. I don't really see with Oblivion. I know that that's the case because I'm pretty sure that they've made that statement many times. And if you look at how Cyrodiil was supposed to be, it was supposed to be like a tropical rainforest or something. It's supposed to have like a lot of vegetation. But with Skyrim, it's a little bit harder to say because Skyrim was supposed to be Nordic anyways. And I mean, if you look at Game of Thrones is just fucking Nordic. That's all it is. It's snow and Vikings. Like, Skyrim was always that, you know?
We may recognize from our own history. They worship real living gods with powers that can be seen in-game. Their history tells a story of how they were outcast for their religion, and through the mighty powers of the Daedra were transformed into the beings that they now are. The Demeri people...
Okay, question for you guys. In Morrowind, you guys know about the big rock, right? The big rocks that are being held up by Vivek because he's using them as a kind of like a power message, I guess. Wherein if the people don't worship him, then he'll just drop the fucking things. If you kill Vivek in Morrowind, why do they stay? They don't fall. Red Mountain doesn't explode. Nothing happens. Everything's fine. Nobody ever answers that.
Have some of the most interesting history in the series, and in Morrowind's entire main story
Azura
focuses
intervention?
on multiple quests teaching this lore to the player.
There's a theory about
dialogue of NPCs as well as a multitude of text and scriptures you must obtain through your journey. It seems
there's a theory about the reason that Vivek later on vanishes, and then that being the cause of Red Mountain exploding and the whole like thing that happened with Vardenfell. There's a theory about it being caused by Azura, because currently, like, the reason that the whole thing with Morrowind happened, where, like, you know, their homeland got fucked and all that stuff, was because Vivek just vanished one day. But there's nothing anywhere that actually specifies what happened to Vivek. He just disappeared. That's it. That's the only thing that we know. Same thing as like the dwarves. Dude just vanished. I wonder if they're gonna like revisit that in Elder Scrolls 6. That would be neat.
clear to me that Bethesda were proud of the lore they had written here, and made a clear point to get
They did some
the player
good lore for this
invested
game.
into it. An alien land isn't complete without alien creatures.
Are you concerned with
And I'm not
Morrowind
just talking
spoilers?
about the grey-skinned, red-eyed, 180 cigarette a day
I have a
smoking
vague
inhabitants of
understanding
this island.
of what happens.
Morrowind throws caution to the wind when it comes to high fantasy, forgetting all the cliches from Daggerfall.
It's kind of hard to
harpies and imps.
be an
Instead,
Elder
we are
Scrolls
treated
fan and
to a
not get
full
spoiled.
roster of entirely
know?
unique inventions. For example, the two-legged Jwlar, who doubles as the locals' pack animals, and their similar but much more aggressive elite cousins. The ant-like Scrib, whose shrieks can be heard all over and whose breath has the power to paralyze, leading a less knowledgeable adventurer
I know
to
that
succumb
at
to the
the
death of a
end,
thousand bug
you have an
bites.
option
These Scrib later grow to
of
become
doing
the
a thing.
Quama, a species that lay eggs underground. These eggs are then used
But,
as the
yeah.
prime source of food for the local Dunmer, including the jelly from the previously mentioned Scrib. Morrowind sure has a lot of things, but cuisine isn't one of them.
Eggs.
Taken to the skies, and we have the large netches that dominate the air of the marshes and grazelands of the island, whose leather is used for
Khor.
armor in lieu of the traditional kind.
The best
And of
Elder
course,
Scrolls
there are the cliff
streamer,
races.
VTuber, Guargura.
I will admit that
Oh my
these
God,
are
cliff
far too
racers.
common in this game. Yes, they're canonically the vermin of this land, being such a nuisance that the first Dunmer to greet us, Giab, later achieves sainthood after he drives these annoying creatures from Vardenfell. I will not blame anyone for installing a mod to reduce their numbers. But if, like me,
Cliff
you like to
racers were
sight them out the
insane.
sky,
They
can
were
act
so
as the
hard to
perfect
kill,
target
too.
do so. There's not just fauna either. The enemies of this game are something else. I won't disagree that Oblivion and Skyrim are also capable of creating some alarming and horrifying enemies, but
Oh no
Bethesda's
no
third
no!
installment
Morrowind
has to
did.
take the cake.
Morrowind felt like a fucking horror game. When you went into the dungeons and stuff, even today, it feels like a fucking horror game. That's one of the reasons that I never explored the dungeons. Because I tried doing the main quest, went into the dungeons, and I was terrified. I was also a kid, but you know. Like you look at the hunger and stuff. Oh my god, man!
The ash creatures of Dagothar's armies are more than f***ed up. First, a Dunmer is infected by the soul sickness. It isn't known how it is contracted, only that those affected find themselves having more and more restless nights, walking out into the streets at night, stuck in a clouded dreamlike state. The dreams convey a barrage of messages from Dagothar himself, telling the sufferers of his plan to drive out the Imperial and Outlander invaders from Vardenfell. After weeks of no sleep and hypnosis from the Mad God, the Dunmer lose their sense of identity and become aggressive. These are known as Dreamers. Shunned by their communities, they wander to the evil 6-house bases dotted around Morrowind. Here, they face the most gruesome transformation ever documented within the Elder Scrolls. Over time, they slowly lose their eyes, becoming the Ash Slaves. They consume hunks of corpus meat, the flesh of the horribly deformed sufferers of the corpus disease, whom share a place among the Ash creatures within the 6-house bases. Eventually, the entirety of their face rots out of their head, leaving them as the Ash Zombie. Don't be fooled by the name, however. These beings are still lucid and not undead.
I actually didn't know much about
these
these.
creatures with a spell, you may speak to them and learn of their suffering. They beg for sleep, for Dagothar to let them sleep. They don't seem aware of what has happened to their face, only that they now cannot see and cannot hear. Later, a tentacle works
crazy.
its
What the
way out
fuck?
of the hole within the face.
Yeah, a
and the
couple of these
creature
I
gains a whole new consciousness.
Don't actually recognize.
They are now fully serving of
But I never did the
Dagothar
story, so
and
maybe
are
that's
granted
why.
new magical abilities. These are the Ash Ghouls. Their final transformation ends with them rising to become ascended
seen that.
sleepers, losing almost all of their past Dunmer bodies. These terrifying beings are more tentacle than mer. I hope that little horror story there makes
That's
it clear
crazy.
why
I thought
the
he was gonna be
enemies
talking
of
about
this
like the
game
hunger
are
and
great.
stuff.
Without Michael Kirkbride's drug addled
'Cause the hunger was
the world of
terrifying.
Morrowind would be a whole
The
lot
Bone
less
Walkers?
interesting. The magic of Morrowind offers one of the most dynamic vanilla magic systems in any Elder Scrolls so far. No
The magic
power is
system in
blocked
Morrowind's
from
done
you.
right.
If you want
It's
to
so good.
levitate hundreds of feet
It's
in
so
the air
good.
while firing down an icy
It's
death
busted,
into
but
the
it's
people
good.
below, you can, given you are a powerful enough mage to do so. In lore, the battle mages of Tamriel are meant to be some of the most terrifying warriors in the entire land, and Morrowind makes it clear why. You can buff yourself to have the strength of Numidian himself, and strike your opponent with the force of 1,000 suns, and all of this is entirely vanilla, and possible to the
Specifically,
player.
flesh golems
Yes,
made by
it was
Dunmer, right?
unbalanced,
I actually don't
but
know.
so is magic itself. If someone on our planet had the power to cast magic, they
But
would
maybe.
also be seen as OP. That's simply how it is. So why nerf that possibility from the player? By removing the
I don't
spell-making ability
I don't think they
in
really
Skyrim, magic was pushed to the side,
talk about bone
leaving
walkers in the
instead
other games
stealth
much.
and warrior builds to be the main viable option, which makes little sense in a universe where a mage was able to imprison an emperor into the plane of oblivion and then convincingly impersonate him for years, all due to his magic ability. The removal of levitation from the Elder Scrolls is one of the most egregious and laziest choices by Bethesda.
Yeah,
They removed an important aspect of the game, but that had entire dungeons designed around it with hidden loot on ledges only accessible to the magically inclined. And it was removed just because the engine was unable to run smoothly on the hardware of the time.
It's sad. I wonder if they'll revisit it, if they'll even like consider it.
There's also the enchanting system. While this remains similar to the modern games, in Morrowind you could pay someone to enchant an item for you. This makes sense. In a capitalist society, if someone has a skill,
you know what?
They have the option to...
I'm gonna say this. I think with Elder Scrolls 6, they need to stop thinking about trying to make the damn game run perfect on console and make it run good for PC, okay? I would feel bad. I don't actually do that. I would feel bad for like people who are just console gamers, but at the same time, it's like, bro, with PC, the limitation is the hardware, and I'm ready. I would hate myself, but I would also not care. I would go fucking like straight up broke, empty my bank account just so I can have a PC to run the fucking game. All right, just give us something good.
Offer said skill for a fee, without expecting everyone to learn it. This meant a warrior build was not left without the ability to enchant his own equipment just because he wasn't skilled in that ability.
Exclusive?
He could instead
It'll be on
pay
PC.
someone to do it for him.
I don't know
This
about
related to
PlayStation
spells too. Skyrim removes this because the modern Elder Scrolls wants you to do everything. They don't push real role playing anymore.
Yeah, the magic system in Skyrim was so shit.
Look at this.
With mods, it's better,
Everything
but
you need in one place. Morrowind was the last Elder Scrolls made with the PC in mind first, and the way the menu works is the best way of showing this. You can resize every menu to how you like it, and not only that, but you could pin any section of the menu to be permanently on your heads-up display, meaning that you could always have your map up or quick access to your spells and enchanted items. While we're on the menu, here you can see my character kitted out in layers of gear. You see, in Morrowind, your character could actually wear clothes underneath their armor, which is much more understandable than being bare.
Yeah, I remember the Xbox Morrowind menus.
It's
it wasn't terrible, but
this also meant you could buff the hell out of yourself with some enchanted items. The game even allows you to have mismatched
clothing mechanic
and gauntlets, truly allowing you to kit out your playable character.
Yeah, dude.
How you see.
Even with the fucking gauntlets, it wasn't like, oh, you have gauntlets. No, you had left and right gauntlets. You could have separate gauntlets. They don't do that anymore. Why? Oh, they need to bring. Oh my god, they really, for Elder Scrolls 6. I know what they're going to do. They're going to continue with the trend of simplification, but they'll probably add like a little bit to it. But I'm hoping that they look back to like Daggerfall and Morrowind. They need to, especially Morrowind. God, you gotta bring some of that back.
The factions of Morrowind feel the most real we have ever had, only matched by the brilliant quest writing of Oblivion. Faction quests would start easy and get harder with time and skill. Factions even war against each other and the quest lines intersect. Without proper planning, you would be unable to complete both the Thieves Guild and Fighters Guild, for example. But most importantly of all, you could only be promoted if you were leveled in that guild's skill sets. No warrior who could only cast a measly fire spell becoming the Archmage of the College of Winterhold. No stealthy archer becoming the Harbinger of the Companions. Role-playing mattered. While you could
in Morrowind, if you joined something,
in one playthrough,
usually they had you kill somebody of the other
and much
faction.
More planning than simply starting a new build with the skills needed.
You could break quest lines easily in this game,
as well as actual role playing. I won't lie here, Morrowind's main quest neither had the epicness of Oblivion's nor the grandeur of Skyrim, but it does do one thing right. You aren't a Mary Sue. Not exactly anyway. Yes, you fit a prophecy, being born on a certain date and under a certain star. But so are many people. You aren't special in that regard. The Emperor didn't see you in any dreams, and you weren't born with the divine blood of the Dragonborn. The godlike powers you obtain in the game are earned. You earn your immortality. It was you who got infected with Corporus, and it was you who helped find the cure. You gained the trust of every tribe and every house. You had to
I think
jump
that's
through the hoops to be named
much better,
Portator
though.
and Nerevarine. You proved yourself worthy of Azura's
I also, I'm not
blessings.
gonna lie,
This
I thought
game
that
didn't
main
give
story
you
for
anything.
Oblivion was...
No Amulet of Kings proving your story, no Dragon Souls powering your abilities.
Is that fucked up to say?
Everything that happened because you made it so. The game even touched on how you aren't even that special, showing many other failed Nerevarines before you, all who had met the prophecy but weren't as successful as you were in your quest. It was this feeling of progression that makes the story stand out. It's a story of
What did I
learning,
say?
understanding.
I said that, in my opinion, when it comes to like the main stories and stuff, I haven't played through the main story of Morrowind yet, but I have heard how good it is. So I don't want to make a judgment with Morrowind until I finally like actually sit down and beat it. But at least personally, I didn't find Oblivion's main storyline to be like that crazy. I mean, it wasn't though it was bad. It was still good. It's just like, I don't know. It was kind of you know? At least to me. But I don't know. I know everybody's gonna have a different opinion on that one. That's why I was like, I feel like that's one of those where like it's a little touchy. Maybe I'll piss somebody off with that. But I don't know. I was like, like after I beat it, which I can't say anything about Skyrim's either, because Skyrim, I beat the main story like once or twice and then I was done with it. But Skyrim did have a good story. He was disappointed in the Oblivion ending, to be honest. Yeah, I felt like, for me, I felt like you were just holding somebody's hand the entire time. And you're just patting them on the back, being like, you read your books, I'll go do all the hard work, but you're going to get all the recognition, okay? We're going to make sure that everybody likes you. They don't know who the fuck I am, but we're going to make sure everybody likes you, and I'm going to go do my own thing. All right? I'm going to go do all the hard work, all right? You sit here in front of the warm fire reading your books, all right? That kind of pissed me off. At least with Skyrim, you went out and did the shit, right? Well, I mean, you still... Wait, no. My bad. Let me rephrase that. You still did the shit. But at least with Skyrim, you got the recognition, right? They were like, oh, you did the thing. Holy shit, you absorbed a fucking soul from a dragon. You did the thing. Oh, you defeated this person. Good for you. Whereas in Oblivion, it was like, all hail Martin. And I'm just like, bro, can I kill Martin? Just let me do it. Just let me do it. All right? I'll take it. I'll be Martin. Let me play as Martin.
And mastering. You start by learning about this alien culture, and then you must work with them and start to understand them. And finally, you must rise to the occasion, prove yourself as
the Greybeard's
savior,
called
and
me, okay?
vanquish the evil that blights them. Also, you get to fight a literal god, unlike in Oblivion where you merely aid someone else to do so. With every good story, there is a good bad guy, and boy does Morrowind deliver there. Dagolfur is everything you want.
Spoiler alert, in ESO, you can also fight a god. A couple of gods. So,
in a character known as the Mad God. I don't care if Morrowind seemingly blew all of their voice acting budget on him, it was worth it.
Dagoth welcomes you, Nerevar, my old friend. I'm a god. How can you kill a god? A grand and intoxicating innocence. Omnipotent, omniscient, sovereign, immutable. How sweet it is.
I think this is
going to
have spoilers in it, by the way.
An
Just
enemy
as a heads
who is
up.
rightfully cocky and not
wasn't
for one moment
obvious.
scared of the player until the very last second. There's a reason that to this day, he is the subject of some of the best memes the Elder Scrolls fandom have to offer.
From the hearts. Ooh. Ooh. Ooh.
I'm a god.
How can you kill a god?
What a grand and intoxicating.
And like any well-written big bad guy, he has a compelling narrative that may even make you want to join him in the end, although that is unfortunately not allowed. Compare this to Mehrunes Dagon, who doesn't even have a line of dialogue in Oblivion, or Alduin the World Eater, whom we learn little about other than he's gonna eat the world. Morrowind, like many games of that era, used ample amounts of stock sound effects that you'd likely have heard before, but that doesn't stop these ambient sound effects being used perfectly to add the necessary atmosphere to the environment. Travelling through the Ashlands was adequately creepy, with the distant horns of Red Mountain blaring as small rocks fall and the faint call of a silt strider can be heard over the horizon. Just listen to this. Last but not least, the music. Can
It
you
had some
believe
great
that Jeremy
music.
Soul's soundtrack for Morrowind barely lasts 1 hour, and yet the songs are so iconic, so timeless, that they are still being used and recycled as the themes and music of the series to this day. Seriously, Skyrim's theme is literally Morrowind's theme, with angry monks screaming over.
Yeah, they just
exploration is like a
after
surreal
Morrowind
yet
they just keep
calming
reusing it.
dream as you walk through
Remaking it.
tranquil surroundings, listening to Soul's perfect music.
Dun dun dun.
Much like many aspects that make the Elder Scrolls the legendary series it is
The
today,
modding scene.
modding within the Elder Scrolls series traces its roots back to Morrowind. Yep, you owe all your Skyrim porn mods to this game. The first game in the series to allow such extensive modifications, the game was released with a copy of Bethesda's own in-house development tool, the Construction Set. This allowed absolutely anyone to launch a program and fundamentally change most aspects of the game. Like with Skyrim and Oblivion, there is a mod for anything in Morrowind. If you can think of it, someone has likely already modded it. I'm just going to go over some of the ones that I think are most important and that I recommend. Graphically, Morrowind is very dated. Launched in 2002, it was praised for its then incredible graphic. But like with your favourite childhood crush, time can have many bad effects. Luckily, as Morrowind uses a pure 3D engine, many of these woes can be fixed with mods. While I personally stick to a basic draw distance extender, as I quite like the vanilla textures and feel, huge mod packs like the MGSO or Morrowind Graphic and Sound Overhaul can entirely alter the look of the game to resemble something closer to a 2010 release.
Yeah, the one that he's talking about is really good. I prefer OpenMW just because the old one still relies, or the other one that a lot of people like to try and make the game look as beautiful as possible, it still uses the old graphics engine, or the old game engine, and it causes it to crash so fucking often. Whereas OpenMW, it doesn't really crash much, unless you have like mod conflicts or something. It's not that bad.
You can tweak all kinds of gameplay mechanics too. I personally use a fatigue mod, as well as an extensive patch called the Morrowind Code Patch. This seeks to fix many bugs tied to Morrowind's code, as well as offer modern abilities, such as being able to cast a spell while holding a weapon, much like in Oblivion. Finally, when it comes to the world, Morrowind has some of the most extensive world building mods out there, rivaled only by the multiple ongoing Beyond Skyrim mods in production. Although unlike those, you can actually play these mods. Huge expansions like Tamriel Rebuilt and world altering modifications like Morrowind Rebirth add hundreds of hours extra content.
It's already the longest Elder Scrolls game.
Deepest Elder Scrolls experiences available today.
It's already the longest Elder Scrolls game.
Themselves even released free DLC for everyone as a way to promote what could be done with the construction kit. The company that would go on to sell horse armor gave away higher quality mods for free just 4 years earlier. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. And guess what? Not only is the Morrowind modding community alive and well, it is about to receive its biggest injection of innovation yet. The OpenMW team are working hard to recreate Morrowind's game engine from the ground up,
back before it
completely
released.
Open source. What this means for Morrowind is that no longer will mods be limited by the construction set, nor the NetImmerse engine. Instead, mods can, theoretically, be almost unlimited in their scope, as long as the modders in question have the necessary skills at hand. Morrowind is a game that simply refuses to die, transcending past a cult classic. And
even if you guys want to play the vanilla version of Morrowind,
oh, and by the way, with
download
OpenMW, there is already a working and functional multiplayer mod for Morrowind, allowing players to work cooperatively in the game world. This is exactly what people wanted when they asked for an online Elder Scrolls, not the MMO we ended up getting.
Okay, hold on. No. Hey, look. ESO was terrible when it released, but in 2016, after the whole big update and everything, ESO is actually really fucking good today, okay? I don't care what anybody says. ESO now, in its current state, is sick, all right? Don't be shitting on ESO, okay? ESO in its current state is good. I like it, all right? It's still a spin-off. It's still not the same as, like, you know, playing Morrowind or Skyrim. I get it, because the combat's different, everything's different. But it's a fucking MMO. What do you expect? It plays like a fucking MMO. Who would have guessed that an MMO would play as an MMO?
On your phone. Don't get any ideas about another Skyrim release, Todd.
Do you guys not have phones? Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
Oh my god, the Diablo thing. That was such a terrible thing. They were like, yo, we're releasing, after all this time, a new Diablo game. and it's on your phone. And then everybody is like, what the fuck? And they're like, what, you guys don't have phones?
But what if, after all this,
such a terrible
the game is
take.
still too old for you? I will first ask you to please give it a chance. With the tweaks already mentioned, they seriously make the game much more approachable. But if combat really is such a big sticking point, then there is always the full conversion mods, such as the already released More Oblivion or the upcoming Skywind. More Oblivion allows you to play the entire game within Oblivion's engine, including the upgraded combat that came with that game. This is also honestly the only way I play stealth characters in Morrowind, as the base game's stealth features are a little clunky by modern day standards. When Skywind does release sometime in, let's say 2030,
Yeah, it's going to be a
I'm
while
sure that
still.
will also be a brilliant way for the reluctant
can't wait for
gamer
that.
to experience this awesome game too.
I'm so excited
As
for
mentioned
that.
earlier, that mod will come with full voice acting, so it should be the most accessible version of Morrowind.
It's going to have full voice acting, but I'm curious if it's going to have every line of dialogue. That's going to be insane. It also, when it releases, it will not have any of the DLC content. It's just going to be the base game, which is still a lot. To be fair, it's still a hell of a lot. I can't wait for this one. This one's probably not going to release for quite a few years because they don't want to, like, it's very far into its development. But there's no date on it, and they don't want to set a date on it because of they don't want to like set a date and then feel rushed, right? They want to release something that they see as perfect. That being said, Sky Oblivion releases next year, and you know damn well we're gonna be fucking playing that.
To date.
The legacy of the Good.
With Morrowind's success came the rebirth of Bethesda. No longer were they a dying company, but instead a developer motivated to do more. No longer would they stretch themselves too thin, instead choosing to focus on one game at a time. Next Oblivion, then Fallout 3, and finally Skyrim. Each time breaking more records and winning more awards. They were proving themselves to be a force to be reckoned with within the gaming climate, even though, by all accounts, they remain a medium-sized firm compared to the Goliaths of the industry. Before the mishaps of the last 5 years, Bethesda was a name of prestige that mustered ideas of grand and fun game experiences unlike anything else in the gaming landscape at the time. And it can all be owed to Bethesda's last shot at victory, their final attempt to make right
paid
the
off
mistakes
too,
of
didn't it?
Battlespire and Red God.
Some might argue that they focus too
By
much
the
on
time
one
of
game at
its
a time.
release
Yeah.
in 2002, Morrowind had gone through a development hell spanning 6 years. This game
You because of the fact that they've been focusing so much on one game at a time, you guys know if Elder Scrolls 6 tanks, it's gonna be bad. I mean, they'll still like the company's not gonna go under or anything. They're still gonna continue. But then if Fallout 5 ends up doing bad, dude, the amount of time that people have been waiting for Elder Scrolls 6, they cannot fuck it up. This is why, like, I think it was a terrible, like, I understand why they did it. It's because they were making, they were creating the new creation engine so that the game was, you know, more up to date on a brand new engine instead of going with fucking Unreal Engine or something. And then they created Starfield, which I'm assuming is more of like, here's what we can do now, you know, even though it was kind of a terrible idea. But there has been so much time since Skyrim to whenever Elder Scrolls 6 releases that the amount of hype that it has to live up to be successful is probably not achievable. So even if the game is great, it's already going to get shit. So if the game is shit, it's not going to be good.
The game was set to release in 1998 according to a leaflet bundled with Battlespire, but due to development problems associated not just with budget constraints but also with a lack of focus from Bethesda themselves, as well as a problem known as feature creep, due to the fast changing world of video games in the late 90s. The dev team knew of these constraints and worries. The pressures in the studio were the highest. The dev team knew
What the fuck does that staircase go up to?
of these constraints and worries. The pressures in the studio were the highest they had ever been, with many past members citing that Morrowind's development was the most stressful part of their career.
Well, yeah, because the
Morrowind
company was about to
set be
die.
made using the same X engine as Daggerfall, but over the years, technology such as 3D acceleration had dramatically changed PC gaming. Eventually, Bethesda had settled on the Net Immerse game engine, an MMORPG engine that was used by games such as The Dark Age of Camelot. This engine would later be known as Gamebryo. With this huge change, Bethesda would have to spend valuable time learning said new engine and essentially starting all over again. It was this inexperience with the new engine, as well as the huge time constraints
So they
and
didn't make their own
ungodly
engine for
levels
this
of
one.
crunch that led not only to
Why did
many
they
of the
change
bugs
it
in
then?
Morrowind, but to bugs that plagued all of the subsequent releases in the Elder Scrolls series, as well as Bethesda's Fallout games, including Fallout 76. Due to these constraints of its development, Bethesda were forced to adopt a good enough mentality. They didn't have time to smooth out everything, instead accepting that if it worked, it was good enough. This mentality, however, didn't end with the development of Morrowind. This can be seen with the implementations of the many future technologies that were bolted onto the Gamebryo engine, an engine that by all accounts is very capable.
And then it creates
Look
so
at Havoc
many
physics, used by hundreds if not
fucking bugs.
thousands of games. Yet only in Bethesda games do we see these glitches. The code engine powering the Radiant AI was too bulky and glitchy and was eventually scrapped for a far more streamlined approach come Fallout 4. It's been said many places online before, but Bethesda doesn't have an engine problem, but a company culture problem. They don't focus on making the technology perfect, just leaving it in a state that is barely stable. The fact that one of the biggest sticking points the team had with Fallout 76 was that they had to gut and rewrite code from Morrowind nearly 15 years after that game's release shows this problem. They never went back to fix what was broken. Instead, like some dodgy builder cowboy deciding to build a house on shoddy foundations and then add more and more floors and wings to said house over time, with no regard for building standards. While Morrowind did a lot of good for Bethesda and gaming as a whole, most of Bethesda's current problems can be dated back to the development hell this game went through. We can only hope that when it comes to Starfield and the Elder Scrolls 6, they will have finally addressed these issues.
Wait, what happened to chat? I've lost chat.
My story with Morrowind starts when I was 12 years old in 2008. I was in my second year of high school and a new store was opening in my town, GameState. This now defunct game retailer is the highlight.
Yo, hey, are we good? The stream's still up. I've frozen. Uh-oh, is internet going down? We should be able to finish off this video, luckily. You guys ready?
As it was positioned perfectly on my walk from school. Every day I would browse the shelf, seeing an abundance of games I had never even heard of. A memory I'm sure a lot of gamers can relate to. And can we talk for a minute about the branding used by GameStation? It really was designed by a boomer who thought kids interested in games like Crash Bandicoot and Myst were really the cool kids.
I forgot about Myst.
Yeah, look at
I always
all that
forget about
graffiti.
Myst.
This is what a badass looks like in its true form. I was only just discovering PC games, having only played PS1 and PS2 games at the time. Luckily for me, GameStation's pre-owned section was extensive, with offers like Bog Off and Free for £10 allowing us to buy games cheaper than ever. It was in 2008 that I hit the jackpot, bought some of the best games the PC had to offer it. The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, Rome Total War, and Rise of Nations. I said goodbye to my evenings and
I
weekends
played it on
and entered a whole new world.
the original
of gaming.
Xbox.
So, should you play Morrowind in 2020? Yes,
Oh, hell yeah.
without a doubt. Please give it a chance.
It's not even
Whether
a question.
it's the original version, a modded
If you guys can
version,
get-
or a full conversion mod,
I'll mention it in a
this
second.
is
I'll
a
wait.
must-play for any Elder Scrolls fan as well as an RPG fan. Give it at least 2 hours of your time. If you don't like it, then so be it. But I guarantee anyone who likes role-playing games is gonna enjoy Morrowind.
Upon the Hearts. Yeah, guys, I mean, if you guys like Elder Scrolls games and stuff, and you want to go back and like try out Morrowind, especially on uh-oh, wait, I've lost chat again. On a different Wi-Fi connection. What the fuck is going on? I'm on a different Wi-Fi, and I'm having issues. How do I know that it's not Twitch? Bro, I'm on a different fucking Wi-Fi connection on a different computer, and I'm having issues. All right. What was I mentioning? I was saying something. I was saying something, and that threw me off so much. What I will say is that if you guys ever want to try out Morrowind, I think if you guys like Elder Scrolls and you want to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole with like the older games and stuff, and you can get over the graphics and you can get over the clunkiness of like the combat and stuff, whether that means that you either just, you know, deal with it or if you mod it out, I think that it is one that is definitely well worth jumping into. I played the hell out of it. I've played a lot of Morrowind. I've just never beat the main storyline. So it is literally the only Elder Scrolls game that I have not beat the main storyline for, and I've beat Arenas twice. Arena, in my opinion, has 100% the hardest main storyline to complete, because not only is it a extremely old game running on DOS, but it is a game that the dungeons are easy to get lost in, like super easy to get lost in. So yeah, one day I want to go through and I want to beat it. I've debated on doing like an offline playthrough and then trying to beat it that way, but I also am like, well, I could make content out of it. So I don't know, maybe one day I'll stream it. I'm not sure exactly what I want to do with it, but I would definitely love to go back and finally beat it, because it is the one main one that yeah. Content! Yeah, we gotta turn it to content, man. Gotta turn it into content. But yeah, one of these days we'll play Morrowind, because I know quite a bit about Morrowind. I know how to play it, I know how to make builds. I know about some of the side quests and the Easter eggs and all that kind of shit. I've just never played the main story because I never got around to it. There was a time where I was doing an Elder Scrolls marathon off stream, because this was before I started streaming, and right around the time that I started streaming was right when I was in the middle of playing Morrowind during that like quote unquote personal playthrough or whatever. So I stopped playing it, and I just never beat it. So one of these days, though. One of these days. But this video is over. If you guys would like to check it out, or check out any of the other videos that this guy's made, because I believe they've made some other Elder Scrolls videos and stuff, right? Or some other Bethesda ones. Yeah, they have quite a few other ones. They also have some stuff. Fallout had a mobile game? I didn't know that they had a mobile game. That's neat. Yeah, there's the video, guys. If you guys want to go check it out, give it a like. Check out the other videos that this person's made. And in the meantime, I am going to wrap things up because it is 12:30 and I don't want to risk internet doing whatever the fuck it's doing. So